Man, there's a car I loved and I found a book about it. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. I picked up this book. It's actually used. I actually haven't looked at it at all yet. You can see it's kind of beat up here. But this little book here, it's like a paperback book. It kind of reminds me of like a college textbook, a very small one, maybe a grade school textbook. And what I wanted to do here was pick this up because finding copies of this is not super easy. And when you can find copies, they're like 40 bucks. And I found this one for 10. So I thought, why not take a look at it? We can take a look at it together here. I'm not going to go through everything because, as you can see, there are a lot of pages to it, but this is the last Shelby Cobra, and it really is the last Shelby Cobra. Carroll Shelby worked with Ford. He made the original Shelby Cobras with, the AC Bristol bodies, I believe, and the Ford engines, and then he actually went to Chrysler and did a bunch of stuff with Chrysler, including like the little Dusters up to the Dodge Viper, and the Dodge Viper is still one of my favorite cars. To me, the Dodge Viper, even over this car, actually looks a little more Cobra-ish than this car did. Now, I understand this to be kind of the last car that he didn't really design, but he was partnered up with Ford. They kind of brought him in and talked things over, but it was really J. Mays that I think was the driving force behind this car, and it was really to remake the Shelby Cobra. Now, one could argue that the Shelby Series 1 that he did with GM is maybe more the true Cobra. I really love that car. Man, what I wouldn't do to get my hands on a Shelby Series 1. But this car was really trying to take all of the design elements of the original Shelby Cobra and then translate them into kind of modern style, modern design. And I think they really nailed it. Now, I will say that when I look at this, it doesn't quite have the same voluptuousness and the same curves and maybe the same pure sexiness of the original Shelby Cobra. You know, it's got kind of slab sides here. I think the headlights looked a little small. I definitely like this middle section. I thought that kind of captured it. You know, it just needs a little bit more curvature on the sides, maybe a little bit sexier hip back there. But I tell you what, if they were going to produce this the way it was, and I don't know if it was going to be half affordable, like $150,000, $160,000, and if I had it, I would have said, great idea, great car. The Dodge Viper was darn near $100,000 when it came out, and man, I would have paid every penny for that. But what I wanted to show you here was I didn't realize, I think, how interesting this car was. I think it was called codenamed Daisy, Project Petunia, and I don't know exactly how involved Carroll Shelby was, but I think what's really interesting about this, and looks like he gives the backstory here on Carroll Shelby, yeah, and there's like the Dodge stuff that he did, which is kind of really weird. Oh, and then there's the car that I really lusted after. Man, the Dodge Viper, I still do. That is one car that I would love to own. Man, there's a lot of information about other cars here that he did, including the GT40, which actually became the Ford GT. That is another dream car, man. No one's partnering with those anymore, but man, if I could have had one of those, that would have been sweet. And then obviously he was kind of brought back in to do this actual kind of Cobra resurrection, and so I was always interested in that. Now, what's funny about this is that they built it was actually in XXX State of the Union or something like that, kind of in a CG form. But this car actually still exists, and I believe it's in the hands or owned by maybe the chief designer on it or something like that. And so he somehow got his hands on it. I don't know how he bought it, but what's really interesting to me, in the GR1, I kind of like that. I didn't really love it. A lot of people loved it at that time, but we're getting back to the story of this car, is that car is in private hands. It probably retails or has a value estimate well into the seven figures. Oh, there's the Shelby Series 1. Man, I tell you what, there's way more text in here than I thought. This is going to be kind of an interesting book to actually read through. If you are a Carroll Shelby fan, there's probably going to be tons of stuff because this is not just about this car. It definitely seems to have a lot more stuff. But it also seems to go into, the continuation cars. And man, I tell you what, you don't have to be into that last Carroll Shelby car, but this is what it's all about here. But man, I tell you, the first 75% of this book looks like it's about other stuff. Oh, it looks like they made a few here, but it runs, it drives. It wasn't just a mock-up prototype, show car, concept car type of thing. I mean, it was fully done, gauges work, everything. Even though it looks super futuristic, especially the gauges, instead they all worked, and the car is a beast, and someone is able to drive it. Now, I don't know that it's registerable, if that's the right word. I don't think you can get plates for it and drive it on the road legally. But man, it'd still be cool to own this. I mean, I love that interior. That is super cool. It's got this modern look. but it still is kind of like that flat panel that the Shelby Cobra was known for, man. Dude, I definitely like the back end of this. I would, oh man, I'd give my left nut for this, but there is the end of the book here. If you loved the last Shelby Cobra, maybe the last car that Carroll Shelby was really ever involved with, and you want to know more about that, or maybe you're just a fan of his and you want to get an inside look at his whole life, you know, his legacy with cars. I know that a lot of people, when they saw Ford versus Ferrari, that was kind of their introduction to Carroll Shelby, which is kind of crazy. You know, just as time goes on and people have passed, a lot of these names just kind of disappear. You just don't realize like how important these people were. Not that long ago, you know, my uncle worked at Chrysler, my father worked at Chrysler, and they worked there when, you know, these people were coming through there. That's kind of the funny thing about it. So anyway, if you want to pick up this book, like I said, it's not going to set you back a lot. It's not like Sled Driver where it's a $1,000 book. But if you are a Carroll Shelby fan, Cobra fan, Shelby Series 1, Dodge Viper, dude, you should probably have this on your shelf. I might actually have to go find myself a copy that's a little bit nicer condition as well. But I'll put a link to this book in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.
We can discover more and explore so much deeper.